Okay, today is November 17th. The year is 2015, and we're interviewing Carl Schwab. And he's going to give us some of the background on fishing, and then we'll get into looking at some of his pictures. So, Carl, just to start off, why don't you talk to us, tell us a little bit about when you were born, where you grew up, and how you got to Monhegan, which was your first spot in Maine, I believe.
Yeah, it is. Certainly wasn't planned, any of it. Uh, well, I was raised in New York City. When I was in elementary school, my dad died when I was 8 years old, so my mother raised me. And she's the one that came up with the idea of going to Monhegan Island. My godfather and godmother had gone to the island on a vacation the year before, and she came back and told my mother what a beautiful, ideal place it was for a little kid to run around. They'd seen the native kids down there barefoot and swimming and all the good things, so my mother thought that might be a place to summer on the island. I was against it. We had quite a few discussions, or a few, because at that time I wanted to be a rancher in Montana. All I wanted to do was ride horses. And so when my mother came up with this idea of Monhegan Island, I was not for it. I wanted to go back to the camp I had gone to that had horses the year before. But anyway, we reached an agreement, and she says, we'll go in July, and if you really don't like it, then I'll arrange for you to go back to the camp where all the horses were. So we came up, got on the Monhegan boat, the old Captain Samuel Jameson. And thinking back, and I thought this over a lot of years, but even when I got on that boat, which was almost pretty much my first boat as far as big boat, and going to the island, there's some kind of a feeling I had. And it ended up, we stayed the whole summer. I didn't care about going to the horses. And that was the beginnings. And I think I was about 11 then.
Do you remember what year that was about?
Probably 46, let's say. Yeah, probably 1946. And I just fell in love with the island. And I used to hang around the dock a lot. The little apartment my mother had was right on the head of the dock. So that's where the boats used to come in and tie up, usually from New Harbor or Port Clyde, where the purseaners were fishing around the island. And so I got acquainted with some of the captains a little bit just because I was a kid and hanging around. I'd run errands for them. Sometimes the cook needed a quart of milk or something. I'd run up the store and get it for them. But anyway, then one day the captain invited me aboard the boat. They were mending. And he had a Port Clyde crew. There were 1, 2, 3 of the 5 total were from Port Clyde. That's how I started getting acquainted with people in here. And he asked me to come aboard, and he was going to show me how to hold the net while he was mending the net. So I did, and that was our first really kind of speaking to each other. Then he asked me if I'd like to go out with him some night or day when they were going to be fishing around the island. So I was really excited then, and he said, well, if it's all right with your mother, you can go with us. So I ran up and got my mother, brought her down the dock, and introduced her to Captain Levi. He was Levi Hupper from Port Clyde. And so she gave permission that I could go out with him, and that was the beginnings of my whole life. And so a few times that summer, I'd go out with Levi with the boat when they were around the island. And then when I came up the next summer, for 3 summers, my mother came up. When I was 11, 12, and 13, and we stayed on the island. I got to know several of the other captains that were from Port Clyde, and also some from New Harbor, and the men that were on the boats. And when I was 14, my mother couldn't come up. Probably financial or whatever arrangements it was. My mother was a music teacher. She taught piano. Needless to say, I didn't learn. She tried to teach me, but I didn't do it. But anyway, I was so determined. And back then the trains ran. And so I just got on the train in New York. She allowed me to come up alone, which to this day surprises me a little, except she told me she had met so many of the people those 3 years, from the island mostly, of course. And she just said perfect faith that if anything happened, people would be there.
Mhm.
And she felt, as she started staying in Port Clyde after that, she felt the same way here. So I got the train down there, came out, got off in Thomaston, and hitchhiked to Port Clyde. Got on the Jameson going to the island, and stayed all summer. And there was a freight shed on the island, right on the dock there, that never was locked, and there was always a mattress or something thrown in there. So I knew I could find a place to sleep and speak to the captains and see if I could get a job or on the island. I washed dishes, pots and pans, helped paint houses, helped haul garbage or ice. Back then, most of the houses had ice boxes.
Mhm.
So I had an ice man out there, and I'd help fill up just about anything, and then try to get on a boat when I could.
How'd you get food? Did you work for food?
Well, the first summer I was up there, I got a job part-time at the Island Inn washing pots and pans. So I ate in the kitchen.
Mhm.
And I stayed part-time in the dormitory that they had for the people that worked on the island. And then that summer, another person I know out there, a family, Mike Nelson, they had a little cottage, little camp right next to their house. And Mike asked me if I ever needed a place to sleep. There was a cot in there and a kerosene lamp, and I was welcome to that. So that's and then I went sailing with a boat on the island who had the Trailing U, which was a little hotel. And that summer I went with him, I stayed in the dormitory for the people that worked in the hotel. And once I got a job on a boat, I lived on the boat. And that's kind of how I got by. But I got acquainted in here, and the boats that I went on was the Marie H, I've got some pictures of her, and the Nioth, which that's a picture of her up there on
Yep.
in the middle there. That was also from Port Clyde.
Yep.
And the Marie H is the one on top.
Yep.
That picture was loaded with whiting. We were dragging in Portland in the summertime.
So
Whiting
how old
fishing.
were you when you got your first boat? When you went off on your own?
See, I got out of high school in '52, and I went to the university. Man, I fished in the summer on the boats out of Port Clyde, probably the Nioth. And then I went one semester to University of Maine, but it's not what I wanted, so I left that. There weren't many jobs down here at that time, so I went back to New York and got the job I had while I was in high school in one of the supermarkets. And I worked there until spring, got enough money together to buy a beat-up old car, and then came up in the end of June, I guess, and that was it. Then it was history. I stayed. That's when I stayed. I'm trying to think. '52, I got out of high school, so 47, I think, would have been the first summer that I spent up here. 46 or 47, and like I said, I almost fell in love right in the beginning. Something about it I'd never been on the water much. Staten Island Ferry, or paddling a boat around Central Park, canoe at camp, but this was all new.
So what do you think it was that attracted you to fishing?
Well, I don't know if fishing got me or just the way of life around here and the people around here. Because I guess both coincided together. Because that first summer that we were out here, I wouldn't hear of anything other than coming back to the island for the summer. And when I was 14, that was the year I came up. My mother couldn't come, but I also still went to the island. And I think when I was 15, I went to the island. 16, 17, I stayed in Port Clyde. So by then I'd already met about most of the young fellows in here because of the fishing. Lobster, I didn't have any plan on that at all until I was already married and had a couple kids. And I was stop seining, which was a way we used to catch herring back in the old days, where you'd stop off a cove with your twine. Hope they stayed in there. And the outfit I was with, the captain of the boat, the outfit just, when I first started going with him, said, you know, Kyle, you really should get a few lobster traps. He says, we never really know whether we're going to do anything or not. We hope we will, but there's no guarantees, as I knew anyway. So there were 4 men on the boat, or 5 altogether with me, and all 4 of them had a few traps out, because usually lobster with traps out, you can get at least enough to put food on the table. So it was kind of through to him that I got lobster. He said, why don't you get a few traps and hopefully we'll catch a lot of herring. And that's what started me lobstering, just very part-time. I bought a, this was different back then than it is now too. I bought a skiff from a friend of mine for $12. I think it was 14-foot or a 12-foot skiff, and I bought a 5-horse used outboard from another friend of mine. That was my biggest expense. I think that was $100. And I bought 50 cent a piece traps and a $10 license. And for $160 or $70, I was a lobster fisherman. So that's how I started. And I stayed lobstering part-time for quite a few years. I still went seining and dragging and part-time lobstering. And then when my 3rd child came aboard, I got thinking I wanted to be home more. So I started shifting now more into lobstering and not as much into dragging and seining. Still did both for a few years, but less of one and more of the other. And then eventually it was pretty much all lobstering.
How did you learn the skills needed for lobstering?
It's just, well, most of the lobstering I learned myself because it's kind of it's an individual thing. The other things that I learned was, of course, from the captains and the crews of the boats, learning about boats and handling and all of that. We used to, well, purse seining became a year-round thing for a few years. It used to be more in the summer, fall, not as much in the winter. But then the factories started staying open in the winter, packing sardines, so it gave the fishermen a chance to fish all winter.
Yep.
And chase them around. And so I did that, and then I started lobstering more, and each year I set a few more traps and go dragging a little less. And then even when I was lobstering, though, I rigged my boat up for dragging too. So in the winter, we had a few years, there were a lot of shrimp around. So I think 5 or 6 or 7 years I went shrimping in the winter, and then lobstering in the summer and fall, spring, summer, and fall. And way back, I went on the boats from Rockland that went to the Grand Banks. I went on a few trips on them. And the only fishing that I've never done is scalloping. I haven't been on a scallop boat.
So what are the names of some of the people you fished with?
Well, the main 2 or 3 were right in here. Levi Hupper was the first captain who invited me aboard the boat down in Higgin. And so I went with him a couple summers, and then I came up. Of course, it was a little difficult finishing school in New York. Times I got up here, because all the boats had their crews and all. So it wasn't you just walked in and walked aboard. So I worked at the plant down there unloading fish, barreling them up. That's when they used to get ground fish and ship them to Boston. Truck them down, ice barreled. And we used to do that at the cold storage. There's a dozen or more draggers then, 12, 14 draggers that were fishing between Port Clyde, Tennant's Harbor, and Friendship. And they used to take out there. So I worked there about every night. And I went out lobstering a few times when a guy... Back then, not many of the boats went two-handed. That's changed a lot. Back then, most of the boats just went, just one man, captain. And so there weren't a lot of jobs lobstering then to go with somebody. Like now, about every boat, pretty much. Except my son, he goes alone. I guess there's a couple more, but not many. Most of them go 2, even some 3 now. So back then, if we had that, I'd have probably got a job easy. But so I was depending mostly on dragging and seining to get on the boats. And the captain of one lived right in that house that I'm looking at. Look at it every day. Captain Simmons, the one that had that top boat. And she was actually built for Captain on Monhegan Island. She originated on Monhegan.
Mhm.
And then when Manville had a new boat built for Persainan, Birdie bought that one. And that's the boat I went on a lot. And that and the one above it, the Marie H,
Yep.
were the two that I mainly went on.
Now, thinking back, I know you spent a lot of time at sea fishing. Are there any disaster times that come to mind for you, or what was the most dangerous time that you had, or was everything just hunky dory?
Well, no, I guess not all the time. I remember one